Speaking of vital difficulties, we dealt with anger during the last session. The next comes desire. Desire is a recognized vital difficulty because the vital is a realm of life energy, life force, and desire is the motivating factor in life force. Now, desire comes from outside. It does not belong to ourselves. It is there in nature at all levels. But the characteristic desire is in the life plane, and it is desire that really acts as a limiting factor on life. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo describes how life as a power is something immortal, boundless. It knows no fatigue. There was a time when life force had that abundance of freedom of movement. It was on its own plane, life world. At that time, there was a call from the earth plane, the material world, where there were objects, there were forms, but everything was stationary. So he describes in his poetic way how the gods, the beings in these material objects, in the plants, in creatures, they appealed to life force to descend and activate them. And in response to this ardent call, life force descends. And the moment it starts descending, there is great life, there is great laughter, there is great merriment, and there is running. The creatures and the animals and they all run about. There is breath of life. Everything is green, everything is fresh. Just at that time, when the life force descends, he says something dark, something black comes from below, from the inconscience, and lashes at the life force, as a result of which life becomes maimed, life becomes lame, and that is why wherever there is life, there is death. Though on its own plane, life is immortal. Here, in manifestation, on the earth, in the material plane, life is always dogged by its negative, by death, by limitations, weaknesses. and it is desire. The vitiation comes from the element of desire lashing at the once free life force. In all of us, it is desire that vitiates, that limits our choice, our freedom. And there is the physical desire, there is the vital desire. Physical desire you can hope to satisfy. The body wants to eat. You want to have particular dishes. Well, you can have it, and at least for the time being you can satisfy that desire. But a vital desire cannot be satisfied. It grows. The classic simile is that you can throw any number of fuel sticks into the fire, but the fire will only blaze higher and higher. So the desire will only increase. There is no such thing as satisfaction, fulfillment of the vital desire. In the traditional yoga, they speak of nigraha. Nigraha is suppression. Sit tight over it. Starve it out in the hope that desire will die. An empty hope. Sri Aurobindo prefers samyama, not nigraha, samyama, controlled. Concentrate, exert your will and bring it in your grip. That is samyama. In his whole yogic approach, it is not suppression, nigraha, that is the thing to be done, but control, exercise of will. Now, in this context, there is a distinction between need and want. When we speak of desire, we speak of legitimate desire and illegitimate desire. Now, a legitimate desire is a need. But where you want a thing, whether you need it or not, that's the desire. Now, desire attaches itself to need in life. We deceive ourselves, cheat ourselves, saying that this is a need. But we have very, very few real needs. Many are habitual needs, habitual wants, and one has to have discrimination. And then what's the attitude? How do we know what is a need and what is a want or desire? When a need is there, you try for it, but if you don't get it, you are not upset, you are not depressed. The right attitude is that when it is a real need, it will come. It means that it is not a real need. But where it is a desire or a want based upon desire, there is terrific disappointment, there is anger, there is frustration, there is depression. You can make out immediately that it is desire and not a need. For a yogi, it is all right, legitimate to have a need, but not desire. And a need is something which is the minimum, and when it does not come, you are not upset, and you are content to wait upon the higher will. Some of you at least must have heard me recounting how in the beginning Sri Aurobindo did not encourage sadhaks to form an ashram. He encouraged everyone to stay independently of their own. It was only after Mother arrived that some sort of collective life started, and after 1926 a regular ashram came into being. And then one day Mother took a list and asked Sri Aurobindo to look at it and approve of it. He said, "What's that?" She said, "They are the needs for sadhaks who have to supply them." Then she put it aside. He said, "What do you mean? What needs can a sadhak have? I would think all that a sadhak needs is a mat and a puja." But Mother had quite a list: table, chair, cloth stand, and gargamanji, and all these. So he expressed his attitude, but he signed it all right. And that's how this side of life started in the ashram. Otherwise, a mat did duty for a mattress. There were no fridges during those days. There were no fans. And nobody was the poor, for that matter. But as things have happened, our needs have multiplied, our wants have increased in geometrical proportions. But that is by the way. The ideal attitude which Sri Aurobindo speaks of, is when things come unasked, you use them. Use them without attachment. Use them without letting attachment to form. Try to use them according to the divine will. Use them carefully. Use them for the best purpose. But when you lose them, when they depart, don't regret. Even as you use them, you should cultivate that habit of being ready to do without them. That's the yogic attitude. And what is normally advocated is mental and moral control. It is not a spiritual control. Moral, because it is said in scriptures. Mental, because the mind has certain ideas and you impose them upon your body. But a spiritual control depends upon circumstances, upon the conditions, and a spiritual seeker has very few necessities. But still, if things come, they have to be used for self-training according to the divine will. A question is asked, if physical rejection is the right way when things come. Sri Aurobindo says physical rejection is not the best way. You should not have greed for it. To reject because you would be attached is a very weak position. Nature will not leave you alone. So the desire has to be, as he says in Life Divine, pulled out from its bleeding roots from the system. There is pain, there is suffering. When a deep-rooted desire is thrown out, but a desire denied gives more joy than desire fulfilled. It has been a universal experience among seekers that to reject a desire gives a greater contentment to the inner being than to satisfy it. A desire satisfied calls for a worse recoil than a desire disappointed. He observes in another place, because one desire that is satisfied gives birth to more desires. One desire leads to another desire and another desire. The family of desires is endless. So at times, the divine grace works in such a way that all your desires are disappointed. That's the way of teaching, to move away from desire. Desire denied gives room to anger. We observed last time that anger is rooted in many causes: ego and desire. This desire is the nature of the vital being. By controlling the desire, not killing it, but turning its direction, elevating that desire, you turn it into an agent for progress in spiritual life. What is desire at the vital level becomes aspiration. Aspiration for God, aspiration for truth. That is refined and changed form of what was desire. Desire is to get something which you don't have. And at a higher level, when it becomes aspiration, you seek for the divinity or divine consciousness which you don't have. So desire in itself, when it is changed into its higher term, that is aspiration, it is a good thing. That is what is meant when we speak of legitimate desire and illegitimate desire. Legitimate desire is something that allows itself to be elevated and transformed into the moment of aspiration. Thus far, regarding desire, and also the characteristic of Mother's approach is to use things in the right spirit, to know that things are given for your development, for your growth, and to recognize them. There is a purpose in their being given to me, and to fulfill that purpose. That's the right attitude, not the ascetic attitude of a blank refusal for things of life, saying that they are agents of Maya. But they too are divine agents. There was a time in the early 30s when on the prosperity day, the first of every month, sadhaks used to receive from mother not only the box of their indents, necessities, as they were called, but also in an envelope 2 rupees. At that time, there was French currency, and 2 notes would be there. Some sadhaks or sadhikas particularly would not spend that money. They would collect it, and on their birthday, it will make 24 rupees. They put in an envelope and give it back to mother. Once mother observed, seeing this movement, she said, there is a purpose in my giving this pocket money, as it was called, to the sadhaks. If you just return it to me, it serves no purpose. I want to see how you spend it. I want to know on what you spend it. You spend it for rasgullas, biscuits, tea, you buy some books, you buy some incense, you use a little for charity, postal stamps. I would like to know that, so that I know how the consciousness works of each person. So that was an eye-opener to many of the sadhaks. But after the World War started, all the pocket money affairs stopped. That's another matter. But I just mentioned this to draw your attention to mother's approach to things. The right approach and the right use, but without desire. There is plenty of room for self-deception. On this score, we can always say it is a need and not a desire. But we can't deceive ourselves. That is as far as desire is concerned. I spoke of depression coming when desire is denied. Now, depression is almost always a vital phenomenon. The vital sulks, resents, gets upset if some demand of its is not satisfied. Something goes counter to its preference, and it goes what is called going on strike. It does not cooperate. And when there is this vital depression, not only does the face of the person concerned become darkish, but the whole outlook darkens. The person refuses to look at the bright side of things. He always feels everything from a wrong angle, looks at things from a wrong angle, feels bitter, feels resentful, non-cooperative, becomes angry if he sees somebody enjoying. He expresses his depression in 100 ways. Now this depression, mother calls acute egoism. She had always a way of puncturing things. She had a sharp needle. So she said, it is acute egoism. You are so much centered on yourself that you feel you want the whole world to serve you, to take note of your moods, to dance attendance on you. And when it doesn't happen, you get depressed. So it's acute egoism. At the root, just as anger is rooted in ego, depression also is rooted in ego. Depression is not special to spiritual life, not special to yoga. It comes in life at some time or other in everybody's life. But as in the spiritual life, it clouds the soul. The psychic presence, the presence of this soul is covered over. They act like clouds. And block the entry of the psychic or the soul light. You lose, doubts gather, you lose faith, and something in you sticks to that depression. Even when you realize that the reason or the cause for depression is not there, something wants to stick. This is what is called indulgence in depression. You want it, and through that depression you want to express your resentment of the behavior of other people, your rebellion against nature, against God, and in all ways it is an unspiritual phenomenon. It also depresses vitality. The vital force, it acts as a damper, and there is low vitality. If it continues, it becomes the source of tuberculosis. Many cases of TB have been diagnosed not due to malnutrition, not due to infection, but due to strong depression, habitual depression. This is something to be always kept note of. And depressions continue because there is a certain clinging to depression in some pervert part of ourselves. And that part is the vital mind or the vital being. Not a very pleasant subject to end with. Anyway, we have had to deal with desire and depression, and next time there will be other topics connected with the vital difficulties. What correction? Capacity to? Yes. My young friend reminds me. I overlooked one point last time when we were speaking of anger. That we have a capacity to overcome anger, but we do not exercise it. We pride ourselves on being the highest evolutes of nature. It is a sign of higher development of consciousness when anger is under control. When anger controls you, you belong to an inferior order. When you are subjugated anger, it is an indication that you have evolved on a higher scale of consciousness. Recently, some of the scientists experimenting upon dolphins, those huge creatures in the North Sea and South Sea. There has been a theory that the dolphins, their brain is more developed than human brain. There are signs of higher evolution in the dolphins. But why nature stopped that experiment with the dolphins and switched over to human beings, nobody has been able to give an answer. One of the signs that the dolphins have reached a higher scale of consciousness is, it appears that the scientists put some electrodes and gave an electric charge to those cells of the brain which give rise to anger. There is an experiment, a number of dolphins were taken and electric charge was given on those cells. Initially, there was anger. All of them reacted in anger. But next time, when the experiment was repeated, the same charge failed to arouse them to anger. That means they had already adjusted themselves and they could wield a willpower not to get angry. That is the experiment with dolphins. I thought you should know it because it is one of the arguments for crediting dolphins with more developed brains and brain power than human beings.